For 3 decades, Samuel Gallagher had believed himself to be a devoted and loving husband. In his heart, his marriage to Stella was built on an unshakable foundation of trust, affection, and unwavering commitment. They had weathered life's storms together. The crushing loss of their son Daniel at just 5 years old, the financial hardships that followed, and the countless everyday struggles that tested their bond. Through it all, Samuel had been Stella's anchor, just as she had been his. But everything changed the day Stella, trembling and tear-streaked, confessed a truth she could no longer suppress. Her admission was not born from fleeting dissatisfaction or a vague yearning for change. No, it was something deeper, a hollowness that had taken root inside her, a longing to reignite a fire she felt had long since burned out. She needed to feel alive again, to rediscover something she felt had been lost in the monotony of their years together. Seeking solace, she turned to their daughter Sharon, whose bold and unconventional perspective had always set her apart. "You don't have to keep this buried, Mom," Sharon had told her, her tone a blend of empathy and bluntness. "You deserve to feel something again. Life's too short to sit around wishing for more. Maybe it's time to take a leap." Stella had hesitated, torn between guilt and intrigue. "What are you suggesting?" "Even if it's just once," Sharon had replied, startlingly matter-of-fact. "Maybe you should have an affair." The word struck Stella like a thunderclap. The very idea felt alien, even appalling. Yet, as the days passed, the notion lingered, reshaping itself into something less like a betrayal and more like a chance at self-discovery. Sharon had even mentioned Nicholas, a widower from their neighborhood. He had spent years mourning his wife, lost to cancer, and Stella had always found him kind. Their conversations were always warm, laced with an unspoken connection she had never dared to acknowledge. "Nicholas understands loss," Sharon had said. "He's been alone for so long. He wouldn't expect anything beyond the moment." Despite her internal battle, one evening found Stella standing outside Nicholas's home, her pulse hammering with a mixture of fear and illicit anticipation. It was supposed to be a brief escape, nothing more. Meanwhile, across town, Samuel remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing around him. His love for Stella had not waned, and he had spent months carefully planning a surprise to remind her of that love. A romantic weekend retreat to a secluded mountain cabin. To him, it was the perfect way to rekindle their connection and breathe new life into their marriage. He had even written her a heartfelt letter, pouring out everything he still felt, hoping to reignite the passion that once defined them. That evening, as he packed their bags with quiet excitement, setting aside a bottle of wine for their trip, his phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from Sharon. "Mom's with Nicholas tonight. She's staying over." The word struck him like a physical blow. For a moment, he was disoriented. Surely, this had to be a cruel joke. Stella, his Stella, could never do something so unthinkable. Desperation seized him, and he called Sharon, his voice raw with disbelief. "Tell me this isn't real," he pleaded. Her response was eerily composed. "Dad, maybe this is what she needs. It's just one night. It doesn't mean she doesn't love you." A storm of emotions overtook him. Rage, heartbreak, betrayal. How could you let this happen? How could you push her to this? Sharon's reply cut deep. "Maybe if you'd seen her for who she is, instead of who you wanted her to be, it wouldn't have come to this." The call ended, leaving Samuel frozen, his world suddenly unrecognizable. Everything he had worked to build, every sacrifice, every moment of devotion, it all unraveled before him. Hours passed, and sorrow morphed into fury. Unable to stay still, he wandered into Stella's art studio, a space filled with memories, paintings from their travels, portraits of their children, snapshots of happiness preserved in oil and canvas. One piece caught his eye, a painting of the two of them laughing on a beach during their first vacation. It had once symbolized love and joy, but now it felt like a mockery. His hands trembled as he yanked it from the wall and tossed it into a metal bin. Without hesitation, he struck a match, watching as the flames devoured their past, one memory at a time. Photographs, keepsakes. He destroyed the relics of their life together, the tokens of a love that now felt like a cruel illusion. Smoke filled the air, thick with the scent of burnt memories, as he allowed himself to be consumed by the fire's glow. When the destruction was complete, he collapsed into a chair, exhausted but resolute. Grabbing a piece of paper, he scrawled a note with shaking hands. "Stella, you've shattered my trust and broken my heart. I can't stay. Samuel." With that, he packed a small bag, grabbed his passport, and walked out the door. But before he could leave for good, there was one final thing he needed to do. Driving through the darkened streets, he arrived at Nicholas's house. When Nicholas answered the door, Samuel said nothing. His fist connected with Nicholas's jaw in a swift, merciless motion, sending the man staggering backward, bloodied and stunned. Samuel didn't linger. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, his chest a battlefield of fury and sorrow. By the time dawn broke, he found himself at a small airport. Costa Rica had always been a dream of his, a distant refuge, a place to disappear. It seemed fitting now. Using the last of his savings, he purchased a one-way ticket and boarded a plane bound for San Jose. There was no hesitation, no looking back. Meanwhile, back home, the wreckage he left behind told its own story. The studio, once a sanctuary for their shared dreams, had now become a graveyard of burnt canvases and scattered ashes. The scent of destruction lingered in the air, a cruel testament to the choices made and the love that had been lost. Stella awoke in Nicholas's bed, the weight of guilt pressing down on her like an anchor. She had never imagined herself capable of betrayal. She had always believed in the sanctity of her marriage, convinced that their bond was unbreakable. Yet, in the quiet warmth of Nicholas's arms, she had found something she hadn't even realized she was missing. But as the haze of passion faded, reality began to take its place. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand, and Stella's heart sank as she saw the message from Sharon. "Mom, I don't know how to say this, but Dad's gone. He took everything. The studio is destroyed. He's just gone." The words hit her like a physical blow, and in an instant, she bolted upright, her heart racing, her mind spinning. Samuel had vanished, leaving behind only the ruins of what they had built. As she took in the gravity of the situation, one truth became painfully clear. This wasn't an impulsive reaction. It was deliberate, executed with ruthless precision. Samuel hadn't just left. He had made sure she felt the void he had been forced to endure. Stella hurriedly dressed and slipped out of Nicholas's apartment, her mind whirling, the world outside blurring into insignificance. When she finally reached home, an eerie silence greeted her, a hollow echo of the life that had once filled the space. An unsettling dread coiled in her stomach as she stepped through the door. The emptiness seemed to press against her chest, suffocating her with its finality. But nothing could have prepared her for what awaited in the studio. The moment her eyes landed on the destruction, her knees buckled beneath her. Years of dedication, countless hours of passion. Her artwork, once the pride of her heart, now lay reduced to smoldering ruins. The acrid scent of burnt canvas and scorched wood clawed at her throat. Samuel had done this. It was not a mere outburst of fury, but a deliberate act of obliteration, a message unmistakable in its cruelty. Her phone buzzed in the suffocating stillness. Another call, this time a voicemail from Sharon. The sound of her daughter's voice, thick with tears, sent a fresh wave of agony crashing over her. "Mom, I never meant for it to end like this. I thought you just needed something to hold on to, something to make you feel alive again. But now everything's unraveling. Dad's gone. He left a letter. He says he's starting over somewhere far away. I don't know what to do. Please, just come home." Sharon's words struck like a blade, cutting through the remnants of Stella's resolve. The weight of her choices bore down on her with crushing force. Her daughter had encouraged her, believing it would bring her happiness, but it had only ignited an irreversible catastrophe. Samuel had not stopped at emotional devastation. He had dismantled her existence with surgical precision. The bank accounts were drained. The house was being sold. The retirement savings were gone. He had taken everything, ensuring she was left with nothing but regret and debt. Any access to shared assets had been stripped from her grasp, leaving her financially paralyzed. The marriage that had once been a fortress of stability was now a pile of ruins, with no hope of restoration. Every day felt like a new reminder of her downfall. What had once been a thrilling escape had become a relentless prison of her own making. She was selling off belongings just to survive, and with each passing day, her isolation deepened. Even Sharon, once her closest ally, now seemed burdened by the realization of what her misguided encouragement had led to. Stella was left alone, staring into the abyss of her own choices. Thousands of miles away, Samuel was forging a new path, untouched by the wreckage he had left behind. The lush greenery and sun-drenched shores of Costa Rica provided an untroubled sanctuary, a stark contrast to the life he had abandoned. Here, he found solace in simplicity, teaching English at a small school where no one knew his past. The people were warm, their kindness untainted by betrayal. In time, he found companionship in Elena, a woman whose laughter held no trace of judgment or expectation. She never questioned the ghosts he carried, and he never offered them. Their connection was effortless, unburdened by the scars of the past. For the first time in years, Samuel felt a quiet sense of peace, unshackled from the pain that had once defined him. Yet, in moments of solitude, his thoughts would drift to Stella. Would she ever truly understand the depth of the wound she had inflicted? Would remorse ever take root in her heart? He no longer needed the answers. The power they once held over him had dissolved. He had ensured that her suffering would mirror his own, a lingering consequence of the choices she had made. Even Sharon, whose loyalty had severed the last ties between them, was left behind. In Samuel's eyes, her betrayal was as absolute as her mother's. He had given her the chance to choose differently. She had not. Samuel had learned a truth that he would carry forward. Forgiveness was not an entitlement. It had to be earned. Where there was no respect, no loyalty, there was only one path forward: to walk away and reclaim the self that had been lost. Piece by piece, he rebuilt himself, shedding the remnants of his old life. He discovered a strength that had once seemed unattainable. Stella, Sharon, and the wreckage of the past, all were ghosts that no longer had a claim on him. His life now, though unplanned, was entirely his own, and for the first time in a long time, he was whole. That, above all else, was what truly mattered. And so, the story ends.